Welcome to my BobThurman podcast. I'm so grateful some good friends enabled me to present them to you. If you enjoy them and find them useful, please think of becoming a member of Tibet House US to help preserve Tibetan culture. Tibet House is the Dalai Lama's cultural center in America. All best wishes. Have a great day.
This is episode 278, Shantideva's Gifts to the World.
No, it's the second highest. The highest is the Padma Bhushana.
Oh, you're right.
Very true.
Okay, second highest.
Padma Shri. From President of India. You know, the president is sort of more beyond the sort of Hindutva, terrible Hindu-Muslim thing that does go on right nowadays with Modi.
Tell us for what you're getting the Padma Shri.
Well, they say. Well, the citation is that I am assisting in bringing back the Buddhist dimension of classical Indian culture to India as Indian, not as Tibetan, but as Indian. And it is true, actually. When I was attracted to India, I was not actually running after Tibetans initially. It's just that they were the only ones who knew about Buddhism. And in the 60s. They were bringing it back themselves. Because Tibet should be just the attic of India, where the ancient things are stored and hidden away from the invaders. And today I wanted to give you a practice. I gave you one practice yesterday. I will start with giving you a practice. And then we're going to chant a little bit. And the first practice I gave you, remember, was to conquer anger by insisting on being cheerful. And that is to say, be forceful when you're not angry is the thing, and when you're cheerful. And then be forcefully humorously forceful when you're dealing with difficulties that would otherwise make you angry. In that light, Shantideva, just to touch it back on it again, in that light, Shantideva has the wonderful thing. He says, "So come what may, I'll not upset my cheerful happiness of mind." In the chapter, this is the chapter 6 of his wonderful guide to the Bodhisattva way, or the Bodhisattva life. The enlightening being life, enlightening Shiro life. He says, "So come what may, I'll not upset my cheerful happiness of mind. Dejection never brings me what I want. My virtue will be warped and marred by it." And then, I don't like this translation so well, but anyway, it says, "If there's a remedy when trouble strikes, why get upset about it?" I'm going to retranslate it. "And if there's no remedy when trouble strikes, why get upset about it in addition?" So that's just so great. It's important that they try to vary the translation, but the whole point was it's the same expression, but just the added addition of a negative. So it's like, if there's a remedy, if you can do something, really, if you can do something about something bad happening, then why be upset about it? Just do it. If you can't do anything about something bad happening, then why be upset about it additionally? So either way, don't be upset about it. Do you know what I mean? It's just so great. And then it says, so where is that? Thing about no evil is there. Well, the basic overall thing is no evil is there similar to. Actually, maybe hatred is even better than anger. Sometimes anger can be, in English nowadays, can be both. It can just be being heated up to do something forceful, or it can be when you've lost yourself to anger, when you've become furious, when you have lost your judgment because you're just become a tool of your fury, and you break things, that you value, and you say things that you deeply regret later, and so on, because you're not yourself. You're under control of this demonic klesha, addiction. And people translate it. I used to translate it, affliction, the klesha. It's a great word, the klesha. It's in the Yoga Sutra, of course, because it's in basic Buddhism. And it comes from the verb klish, which means to twist. And therefore it means something in your mind that twists your being and makes you unhappy. And I used to translate it as affliction. But that's wrong, because affliction is the actual suffering. Whereas a klesha is what causes the suffering. And that's like an addictive thing, Like anger comes to you when you feel weak in a situation, and you feel like it's going wrong, or what's going right is being blocked, either one. And you feel not strong enough to fix that. And so then anger whispers to you in your own voice, well, if I flip out, they'll get out of my way, and then I'll be able to fix it, I'll be strong, because I'll be so flipped out, they'll be really scared of me, and whatever it is, And so then you flip out, and then you're like clumsy as hell, and you make it worse. And instead, and then you're very exhausted quickly. You get an adrenaline rush, and then you're exhausted. So you lose in martial arts if you get angry. So the thing is, but it's addictive because you do feel a surge of energy from it initially. But and like an addiction, it leaves you exhausted, and then you want more, and they're not satisfied. Okay, so then the third. So the second one is that knowing the bigger picture of reality, and then the third one is basically it's called non-retaliation or non-vengeance, literally, because they're putting it very minimalist way of describing it, but it's really forgiveness actually, and it's where you even when you're harmed by someone, you get to the point where you blame yourself, the victim. And you never blame anybody else, the victim, when somebody else harms them. But if you are the victim and blame yourself karmically, that strengthens you actually. I know it's very counterintuitive and weird, but it does, if you know how to do it. In the sense that you say, well, okay, I'm with this person. I put myself in front of this idiot who's harming me. And that was my mistake. And then you look at what you can do something about by saying that I must be somewhere at fault. I'm in this place. I was born in this town. Whatever it is. And you ignore the other one. You realize they're just a victim of anger, and you say, never mind, they're helpless. I'm not bothered. I'm not going to waste my energy being angry or thinking of how to get back at them. I'm going to do some more about myself. This will never happen again, and blah blah blah. So you break a cycle, and people who harm you inevitably. And you do that by using karma yourself. You say, well, in the previous life I must have been bad to this person, so they're good. So now they're hurting me, and now I will never have this problem again, and I don't want to hear about that other person. So in other words, you wall yourself off in a way from the harmer, and you strengthen yourself by forgiveness. So forgiveness really, there's a self-interest in forgiveness. It doesn't do anything for the other idiot. They don't appreciate it even, unless they're dying or something, and then they're begging you to forgive them. And even then, it's not your forgiveness that matters, it's them repenting, But forgiveness is, the psychology of it is really brilliant. And it has to do with this way, which is one of the few things of a takeaway. A lot of you were Ram Dass people, you are Kriyadi people, you have Bhakti, and you want to know about the wisdom of Bhakti, yes. Well, you will get this wisdom more immediately. A lot of different wisdom will come to you when you submit to causation, is sort of what I could call it. You decide to surrender to causation. You get out of worrying about all kinds of weird things, and you realize you are a cause and effect, which means karma. You are a causal process, and you've always been that, and you always will be that, and it's been beginningless, and it is endless also. So, and that means that we won this in this view of evolution, which is what karma is, a theory of evolution, long thousands of years before Darwin. And in this theory of evolution, which is a beautiful description, really, it's not an absolute dogma, but it's really beautiful. What it means then is that we are like self-made humans in some sense. We're like a self-made billionaire, evolutionary billionaires, every single one of us. Because we did billions of those kind of little things in much less free embodiments and situations if we ever felt that those, and we did, because beginningless, you can't say not that anything didn't happen. You have to embrace that we've done everything, because infinity kind of flattens out all relational descriptions. But recently we've done great stuff, and we've done self-restraint and self-transcendence in all kinds of ways that are unimaginable, and we somehow got to be these amazing humans. And then within being human, we got to be the kind of human that has leisure, that has idea of liberation, that has even evolutionary idea of liberation, although the materialists have sacrificed that again by saying that we have no mind to choose, and so we're just we're like tribals again, we're like animals again, we're just robots, and Pac-Men. Some genes are running around, pushing us around. We have no freedom at all. I mean, that's really pathetic. It's supposed to be modern, and actually it's a collapse to loss of the human special thing, actually. What makes a human a great opportunity of being able to choose how to live, and how to love, and how to really make love and altruism and love, unify that with your life force, which actually then unifies you with ultimate reality. Paramatma in action. Paramatma that is giving up its paramahood, that means. Not Paramatma living in space like some sort of psychotic, talking to no one, but I'm everything, and I don't feel guilty leaving people behind because I'm not even here myself. Those kind of insane, like in that first verse I read yesterday, who thinks the Buddha is out detached from everything, someplace, They'll never be Buddha. They don't see the Buddha. That's not what Buddha is, That's not what the great rishis and sages are. They are not in some, unfortunately too many people are so escapist by nature when they get spiritual that they glamorize and they romanticize the idea of being just let me out of here, type of thing. And when you become somebody, I'm just completely gone someplace. And there's no people there, no body, so I don't have any pain. Okay, anyway, that was practice, but I veered off a little too. The preciousness, how precious every one of you is as a human. And, the hardest thing, which I think I almost maybe after 50 years I really sort of got it one day, is the suffering of the gods. And there's too much desire to be a god in these, even in Buddhist and Hindu cultures. Is really a god divine? Not really. We've also been gods. And pleasure gods, whoa! As I told you about the 6 levels, and the top one where you're so sated, all you can do is be a voyeur because you don't even have a drive anymore. And then the form realm gods, where you're just completely cool out, and you're just like Brahma, you're just pure and everything. It's like a big energy thing, and you have like you don't have a hard skin, you're just a big energy field, basically, really, and it's all golden and something. And but what's wrong with that? Well, it gets boring, and you're leaving, and because you're also really smart when you get to be gods, and you have great merit, and you have been tremendously generous and saintly to become a form realm god, and you don't have real lust and hate and anger and things like that, but you realize you can't do that much about beings in hell, being humans who are suffering and destroying each other, and all kinds of other levels of being. So your sort of state is apart from it all. And it's a huge, long state, actually. And so, in a way, it seems like it's going to be endless. But in a way that it's not endless. Because, again, you're a causal being. You achieved that state of Brahmahood, or Brahmakayika, Brahma-bodiedhood. at the 17 levels of it, which are elaborately described by the great Indian psychonauts, the ones who traveled in subtle body to all these areas. And you were just there a long time. And then your mind gets really dull. And then somehow, unbeknownst to you, you're going to leave. And it's like someone who's lived forever in a penthouse triplex, all wrapped in golden cloth and fur and everything, and without, temporarily for a few years without sickness. A human won't be long in the human plane. But this will be thousands, billions of years, many years, aeons. And then suddenly they're going, and there's nothing much they can do about it. They don't know what to do. They don't know where they're going. And some ancient, because karma behind them is also infinite, the evolutionary momentum. And they're going to fall someplace, and they don't know where to land. But form realm are not so bad. But the ones who are really in trouble, the two who are really in trouble, are the formless realm deities. There's also zillions of formless realm deities. And I had this experience when I was in a conference, and I suddenly realized that I'm such a chicken-livered person, and ivory tower and scared of a riot or whatever, and scared of pain, that I must have been a yogi many times, or yogini, many previous lives, and achieved the formless realm samadhis, infinite space, infinite consciousness, seemingly nothingness, and beyond consciousness and unconsciousness, one of those four formless realms, where when you get there, you don't think you have a body. You actually do have a very subtle energy body, but it's not. You don't even perceive it yourself, hardly, and your mind is completely quiescent, and you're like vast space, etc. And Buddha was very clear. Buddha's first two yogi teachers, rishi teachers, first one taught him how to reach the plane of seeming nothingness, like an existentialist, but visceral existentialist, really being nothing. And then beyond being nothing and being something, a little more subtle than that. And you go there because when you're infinite consciousness, then that's kind of boring, and it's sort of bright, because it's just like you're an endless explosion, you're like a pulsar. Because to reach infinity from having been a separated individual, you thought, you're sort of explosive, from before that you're infinite space, and that's where big relax, big release. But then your mind wants to master the space because you have a momentum of wanting to do that, because you're used to subject-object duality. So then it tries to expand to be all the space, and then you feel you are all of it. But since it goes toward infinity, there's always more beyond, somewhere where you're aware and you don't know what that is. And so you're kind of explosive. It's like, I think I've related to rajas. The first one is like sattva. The first one is like perfect embodiment or kind of visceralization of sattva, moonlit, and it's related to moonlight. These are actually in the Book of the Dead, actually. And then the other one is like explosive, so then it has a little reddish flair to it. It's like blood or sun, and it's more female. It's like, I'm all of it. And Shakti. And then that gets tiresome. So then darkness, great, pass out, sleep, nothingness is beckons, And then, dark. And then you go for that. And then somehow that's boring. And then, at least awareness and non-awareness, neither one, something even more subtle, and then that one. So the point is then but when you enter that as a yogi or a yogini, if you're not forewarned, and you haven't really become committed to causality, which is all Buddha asks of people. So that's not a religion, is it? Who's supposed to be committed to causation? Scientists, right? That's the ground rule of science, is look at the causes of things. And what a huge revolution in human history that was. And the Western people think it was the Greeks who did that. But hundreds of years before, the Greek doctor, who was credited with sort of analyzing things in terms of causation instead of in terms of the god's will, Athena or Hera or Zeus or somebody, or Apollo or Mars, or Mercury. No, it's a bunch of causes, Buddhas were celebrated as Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hetun Tesham Tathagata Hiyavadat Tesham Chayo Nirodo Ivambadi Mahasramani Swaha. Of all things that rise from causes, the realized one said what are the causes and how to interfere with them, how to terminate them. And that was the teaching of the great vacationer, the seeker, Mahashramana, not ascetic. So then if you know causation, you realize that, okay, I'm in this seeming place of complete freedom. Vast space, vast consciousness, even nothing, even beyond all that. And but I came here because of a causal process of developing the refinement of my samadhi and detaching from all attachments and letting go of everything and like going past death even and embracing what might even be. Because when you hit nothing, you feel you might die and you don't care, And of course you don't, because luckily nothing is nothing. It only seems like something. So, but if you don't have that understanding of causation, that sort of commitment about it, then you might think this is my final destination. And if you do that, you become a deity of those realms. And there's no limit to the population of those realms because nobody has a body, so they don't bump into each other. They don't require space. They're beyond space. Pure mental thing. Time thing, and long time they're there. And then what they do is they lose completely sense of body, and even more important, because we are 3 levels of human beings, and every Indian tradition says that. We are 3 levels of being: physical level, verbal level, and mental level. I mean, of course, you could say it's all one, and in some way it is, but relatively, on the other hand, there are these divisions. And the speech level is a very important level. That's a mantra, that's language, that's reasoning, that's reasonable understanding. That's speech is really powerful. Also, it's also multi-personal because we understand each other, not completely, because we each have different connotations with whatever we say, and it's all very imperfect, but we do somewhat understand each other, so we share minds with others through speaking. So when you speak, it's a big privilege when someone listens to you. And when you listen to someone else, you open your mind to them, and then their thought occupies your mind. When you read an ancient book, then, someone reaches out to you from the 8th century and helps you by telling you to cheer up. The evolutionary karma theory is so beautiful. I want to tell you this. It's such a beautiful science. Okay, so now I want to give you another practice. Instead of rambling away, I apologize. And on verse 90 of chapter 8, which is the meditation chapter on Shantideva. And by the way, this book, if there's any book you would live with in life, it's really great. It's not a religious book. It's just how to manage your mind and your life and be happy, Really incredible. And so he says, strive at first, and the first 89 verses are just sort of preparatory, and they're like working on the motivation of meditating. What would be the proper motivation for yourself and others, and that you're doing it for everyone to make your vibe, in the ripple of the pond of our interactive human beings, animal beings, you're sending out a good vibe, so you're meditating. It's a way of creating like a little pebble of peace in the pond surface, to ripple outward. And so altruism is a major motive. And then being detached from your body is a big motive. Getting rid of your glamorization, self-glamorization of your skin and bones, as that wonderful guru, Vimalananda, his name, the guru of Robert Thurman. I've been reading that. It is so amazing. That guy is my brother, or he's my guru. I don't know, either one. And it's just incredible. And so, he says, skin and bones, I don't care about my skin and bones. It's a useless thing. It's going to be burnt in the cremation pyre, So, and that's in mindfulness practice. I bet a lot of you have practiced mindfulness. It's the big thing nowadays. and everybody's selling it. And it is great. But in a way, they don't give you the very first focus of mindfulness, which they mistranslate as foundation of. Focus of mindfulness, the very first one, sati patana, smrti upasthana, is on the body. And the very first outcome of that is to be revulsed by your body, to be completely, really very negative, and to be free of it. To stop focusing so much about it. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't mean not take care of it, but it means just be free of it. And they never share that with people. They skip that one. John Kabat-Zinn, he does the body scan, where you sort of are in your body. You feel, that's also useful. It's good. But the reason for the body scan in the Mindfulness Sutra, if you actually read the Buddha's original guided meditation, is that you realize that you're a heap of junk, heap of garbage. In a way, walking heap of garbage. And never mind. And so you completely detach from that. I'm sorry, I apologize, but that's the case. And and then you meditate, like they have a mindfulness thing where you see yourself as a corpse. And you imagine yourself in the first day of decomposition, and the second day, and the third day, and the fourth day, or even with the tuxedo and the embalming fluid and the lipstick and the little rouge or whatever, and they're wearing a little frock or whatever, and like that anyway, and the nose sort of claps a little on one side, and people come and look at you, and they say, "Oh, poor Bob. Oh, I miss him so much." But unfortunately, you have become telepathic, and you're like a ghost flitting around in there at the Bardo, and you've given up trying to get back in the body because it's not working anymore, you realize. And then you read their mind, and underneath that, "Oh, poor Bob," they're saying, "Good riddance. What's he going to do with his Tesla? Who gets the Tesla?" And they tell you not to be upset. And then there's instructions in Book of the Dead. That's everybody's ambivalent, and they all have like 5 things in their mind that they don't necessarily adopt, but they're there. Anyway, so anyway, they leave that out, but otherwise it's great. So then this detachment thing is very helpful and important, but it doesn't mean you go and like kill yourself. It just means you don't have a certain degree of an extra degree of attachment to your body, and actually that lets the body. After all, when is it that the body is most refreshed and happy? Is when we can't fuss over it because we're asleep. And then somehow the door opens and the infinite energy of the loving universe, call it God, call it clear light of the void, whatever you want to call it, comes and like recharges your cells. And up to a point, over a number of years, it cleans the plaque out of your brain so you can remember your name until you can't, Anyway, so that body does well when we leave it alone. Okay, so strive at that, but then after that, this is the practice I want to give you. Strive at first to meditate upon the sameness of yourself and others. And you could translate that samatha as equality. This could be a democratic meditation upon the equality of yourself and others. In joy and sorrow, all are equal. Thus, be guardian of all, as you guard yourself. The hand and other limbs are many and distinct, but all are one, the body to be kept unguarded. Likewise, different beings in their joys and sorrows are, like me, all one in wanting happiness. So, this practice is called the equal exchange of self and other. And what that means is the cultivation of empathy and ultimately of compassion. But of empathy is the energy of compassion. It provides the initial energy of it. Compassion is more than empathy, but it completely embraces empathy. Don't listen to people who might wrongly say that compassion is separate from empathy. Oh, if you have empathy, you're going to be too tired and exhausted, it'll be terrible, and don't have empathy. That's wrong. You can't get true compassion without empathy. Empathy is all important. I love that lady in MIT who wouldn't join my thing because she was over empathetic. She had just published a book and she was overwhelmed with all the events of the book tour online. And what's her name? Brilliant woman who writes about empathy. At MIT, psychologist. I'm sorry, my plaque didn't get cleared up today. I can't remember her name. But she's really nice, a wonderful person. So all one. So then you realize. So what it really means is the exchange of self-preoccupation for other preoccupation, or that means selfishness for altruism. So you systematically meditate, and you don't have to be sitting cross-legged and peaceful and sitting up like that, etc. To do this, you do it also going and walking around once you get it going. It's useful to sit and meditate properly, yes. That's part of the thing, because that's how you kind of get started with it. But then it becomes a part of your daily life, actually. And it's not dependent upon a particular posture or whatever, you know. The hand, so all are like me, all one in wanting happiness. Like, so you look at everyone and you say, well, I don't want to have the ceiling fall on me. I don't want to have a terrible pain in my back or foot or whatever, you know. I don't want to have a heart attack, and everybody else doesn't want to too. So we're all the same, all sitting here wanting to stay happy and peaceful and painless and not have pain. We're all exactly the same. And not only that, each one of us thinks, I deserve not to have pain. And each one of us is upset when we do. And why am I having pain? You know, we feel like that. So we get pained about having pain even. We double it that way. And we're all the same like that. So we're just equal like that, right? That's the first thing. Just like this hand doesn't want to have pain, and also this hand doesn't want to have pain. And I don't want either one to have pain. And when I keep this hand from putting it on the hot pot, on the frying pan, on the stovetop, I don't think I've been so nice to my hand. Oh, yeah, because I'm empathetic with my hand. No, I don't think that. I feel the pain. So naturally, it's just a natural thing to not want my hand to feel pain, right? This pain of mine does not afflict or cause discomfort to another's body. And yet, this pain is hard for me to bear because I cling and take it for my own. Now this translation is never, a translator is never satisfied with anybody else's translation. But there really is a little bit of mistake, because Shantideva, when he writes things, he really gets into our minds because he anticipates our own doubts, you see. So actually what the first two lines of this verse are is his own mind talking to him, saying, well, come on. My pain doesn't hurt anybody else, so why should I get involved with it? And their pain is not hurting me, so why should I be involved? It's like a little bit of a doubt, he's saying. But then he challenges that by saying this, and yet this pain is hard for me to bear because I cling and take it for my own. And this may surprise you, unless you are a veteran meditator, but it is quite possible to dissociate yourself from your own pain. Under hypnosis, there's the famous thing where they put a match, on the hand, the person doesn't feel it, and even the skin doesn't blister if they don't do it for too long when they're under a certain hypnosis. There's a trick that they do, but it works. And then meditatively, to some degree or totally, you can completely ignore a pain. And although it's your nerves are feeling it, supposedly, all our experience, the mind is interpreting and labeling and constructing, and we are in a way responsible for what we sense. It isn't like the object has an absolute way of presenting itself, and it's therefore automatically. And it's lucky that we do feel pain, because then we don't cut ourselves and we don't burn ourselves and so on. So it's part of our way of living. But we can learn. The power of meditation is such that if directed and really intensively educated in how to do it, which should be part of everybody's education in every school in the world, actually. In fact, not just in some yogis or India. Everyone should be meditating, should be taught to do it. It's not religious. It's how to manage yourself, how to manage your mind and even your perceptions, and be responsible for your interpretation element that's in every perception. But anyway, he's just saying, you feel it because you are structuring it that way. And you've chosen to empathize with yourself in a way. You had a choice about that. It is possible to not feel pain, actually, by mind. which is actually a defect. It can be a defect, actually, even. But it's possible. So he says, well, all other beings' pain, he stays at the normal level, though, then he moves. And he says, and other beings' pain I do not feel. And yet, because I take them for myself, their suffering is mine, and therefore hard to bear. And of course, none of us would disagree. You're in love with someone. If you love them, then they are in pain, then you feel that pain. Your child is wailing and howling, and your breasts start to pour with milk, whatever. Even men have been known to leak, so we can empathize, and teammates we empathize, and people in military empathize with their platoon members and so on. Therefore, he says to himself, I'll dispel the pain of others, for it is simply pain, just like my own. And others I will aid and benefit, for they are living beings, like I am with my body. Since I and other beings both, in wanting happiness, are equal and alike, what difference is there to distinguish us that I should strive to have my bliss alone? Since I and other beings both, in fleeing suffering, are equal and alike, what difference is there to distinguish us that I should save myself and not others? But then again he argues with himself. He says, since the pain of others does no harm to me, I should not shield myself from it. I do not shield myself from it. That's his own mind debating with him. But then he says, well, in that case, why do I guard against my, in quotes, future pain, which does no harm to this, my present me? So he says, well, that's showing the role of construction. When you anticipate pain, you will guard against it, although you're not feeling it. So he's rejecting that, although you don't feel it the same way as you feel your own pain, but empathically you can feel the pain of others, in fact. But it has to do with how you interpret your pain and being responsible for that. To think that I will have to bear it is in fact a false idea, for that which dies is one thing and what is born is something else. Well, here he's just strengthening the idea that your future pain that you anticipate is really just as different from you as somebody else's pain in the present is different from you. He's just strengthening that argument. But I know one person who tries to use that as an argument that this particular great master didn't accept the reality or was not convinced of the reality of former and future lives. He tries to pretend. Because we're continuums, So then the next life will be somebody different. So therefore it's not really us. He tries to make that argument. But it's not really us when we were 15 and now. There's nothing about us that's the same except maybe our name and our social security number or whatever. Every cell, everything has been replaced many times over the years. And there's no one thing in the middle of it all that is exactly the same, except for our delusion. When we look at a photograph of ourselves at 6 or something, and if we can excavate in the memory what it felt like to be there holding daddy's hand or mommy's hand or whatever it was, and a little thing with a weird grin on the face. If we get back to it, then there's sort of a click where we think, oh, right, I was there, if we remember the scene and all. And then we think that encourages us in the false view that there's an unchanging thing in there, which there isn't. It's all changing. Even our experience of being in nirvana changes. It's for the sufferers themselves, you'll say, he says, to shield themselves from injuries that come. So, this he's reinforcing, like, I don't have to bother those people. And then again, he answers his own debater. And it says, the pain felt in my foot is not my hands. So why, in fact, should one protect the other? Why does my hand go to put medicine or anesthetic or whatever it is on my hurt foot? Or a bandage, whatever it is. Then you shouldn't do that because it's not the hand's pain. So what is that? True, it's inadmissible, you'll say. It happens simply through the force of ego clinging. So then his own mind admits there's this interpretive element in our experience, and we are responsible. We create our world all the time, and therefore we are creating, and we're responsible for creating the way we see our environment. And this is very fascinating because in the Buddhist typology or phenomenology of the 5 heaps, which is used by Buddhist meditators for thousands of years, the material heap, the sensational heap, which people wrongly translate as feelings, which can be emotions, but it's not emotion, it's pure sensation, pleasure, pain, or numbness. The conceptual heap, the activity heap, mental construction heap, and then the consciousness heap, the 5, what they call the 5 heaps, or the 5 aggregates. They make it sound like technical, like an aggregate. But it's the literal word skanda means a heap. So those heaps are part of you. So for example, the way your being is, not only your eye sense organ, but your whole eye sense field. So that's you. So whatever you see around you is you in this thing. So we're very interwoven with each other because we all see we think by language is all the same room. But actually each of us sees it differently. And the way I see it is part of my being, like my body. And we carry our visual fields around with us, waking, actually. Isn't that interesting? I think that's very interesting. And it really, it's a way of being more free also. Because then you don't get stuck in just, it's exactly what you don't have to live. One reason why I think people, when they die, or when they think they're going to die, like some guy climbing a mountain, hanging on the cliff or something, who thinks they're going to die, then they say, right, life flashed before my eyes in a split second. And because why? They didn't have very many quality moments in that life. They were just living in a field of concepts that they were indoctrinated into. And everything they saw and did, that's a person over there. Oh, yeah, that's Joe. Oh, that's so-and-so. Oh, this is the room. Oh, so they never get out of their own net of concepts. And so they don't observe. And they don't have an amazing moment of looking at a leaf. And that's why when they get really drunk or stoned or something, people are like, huh? What is that? And then some guy who's standing around, the guide, that's a daisy. What? I thought it was a whole universe of like, whatever, The galaxy, I thought. What? That's a daisy? No, it's a galaxy. There's a zillion beings in there. So you don't have to go to those lengths. My point is, it's very amazing, the understanding of the human being that you encounter in this culture in which you love to bhakti. And my job here is to help with the wisdom of bhakti, to confirm you even more in doing it. Okay? So to think I will have to bear, okay, and then it's a beautiful thing, goes on quite a while. And then it gets, and then people say, no, but compassion makes us feel such pain. Carl Sagan run around about compassion fatigue. We all have compassion fatigue because of media. We see people starving in Ethiopia or something, and then we all freak out, and it's too much. And so it calls it compassion fatigue. But the compassion is never tired. Real compassion can never be tired. Conceptualized compassion, sympathy, pity of some type, can make you tired. Yes, but real compassion doesn't, because real compassion makes you blissful, actually. Strangely, it's very strange. But I'll try to get to that. And then, but thinking of the suffering of beings, how can you regard as great the smart of your compassion? Dalai Lama says, I remember one time when he said it, it was actually not personally, it was on media that I saw him say it. He had a thoughtful look on his face. And it was easier, I wasn't there, so I just was seeing his face. And he said, when I get overwhelmed by suffering, and remember this is a man who feels responsible for 6 million Tibetans who've been experiencing a Holocaust, basically, for 70 years now. Sort of ongoing, on and off, a little relief here and there, a little bit of pause, but basically ongoing, and now doubling down again at this moment. And torture, a lot of torture and imprisonment and arbitrary killing, and unbelievable. And disruption complete of life, and then the slaughter of all the huge amount of wildlife as far as the non-human beings go in that country. In that huge country, big as all of Western Europe, big as the whole U.S. west of the Mississippi. And so he's felt a lot of empathy, a lot of suffering, not to mention all this. You know what he did? He was supposed to give a grant to Tibet House a couple of years ago, and then still he will eventually. But he did, from his book royalties, which are in a fund. He did not have them personally, but he directs it. What does with it? And then we didn't get it, and we were so upset. And then was never announced, but I got a letter from the head woman of UNICEF informing me, thinking I might like to know, that he had given $1 million to UNICEF to feed the starving children in Yemen, or to help feed them. Obviously, 1 million is not enough at all to feed them. And he didn't know, and didn't announce to anybody, and didn't even announce to us who were, we were like the little chicks waiting for a grant he wanted to give us to preserve Tibetan culture because he likes us, and we still didn't get it, but we will. And but that's amazing, But anyway, what he said was, when I'm overwhelmed and I'm getting really bogged down in the huge suffering of so many people, I said, and then, but when I do it, is I just think about more of it. I open even more, and I stop feeling that it's bogging me down, and I'm suffering because of that suffering. And I think their suffering is going on, actually. And I don't think about me suffering because they're suffering. And when I do that, I feel so much better. I actually then become happy, he said. And why? Because obviously, if you become disabled by being aware of others' suffering, you're doing the opposite of being compassionate to them. You are disabling your ability to be of any help to them, even mentally, even to try to visualize them to somehow that there's a way of being free of that suffering. In other words, you just give up because you feel crushed. So then in a way it just becomes your own self-suffering that you're stuck in. So compassion, by this exchange of self and other, and of replacing your self-preoccupation with other preoccupation, is the biggest way of relieving yourself of wallowing in your own misery. And as he said, that's why he says, if you want to be a wise, selfish, meaning selfish person, using it ungrammatically, like we would say it in Tibetan. If you want to be wisely selfish, let's say, be compassionate. Because when you start to really develop real compassion, really being out there with the other suffering, the first being who gets relief is you. That's the first one you make happy. By not attending and not dwelling on your suffering and ignoring it. And not because, well, in a way, it was a good handle of you appreciating how much worse theirs is. And then being with that. And then realizing the only way that I can do anything to match the enormity, the agony, the gravity of that is by being energized myself. And to do that, I have to find bliss somewhere. And then when you get used to it, you can find it in yourself. Right? Because that's where you have it. Look at us. We're all, look at a bunch of happy campers here. Completely happy. Oh, tell me your names now. You two.
Me?
Yeah.
Jackie.
What is it?
Jackie.
Kathy?
Jackie. 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 Jacqueline.
Daphne?
Jacqueline.
Oh, Jackie.
Yes.
Okay, got it. Sorry.
Yes.
Jacqueline. And you just a new bride, right?
New bride?
Or didn't you just get married?
Well, no.
Oh, who are the two people who just got married? Oh, I'm sorry, I was mixing you up.
Oh, I mean, I just got married 2 months ago.
Where are the two who are getting married? Who just got married? Oh, are they not here? The married couple? Oh, over there. Come on now, don't be so shy. Now, what's your names again?
Amy.
What's your name?
Amy.
Can someone?
Amy.
What?
Amy.
Davy? That would be great. The goddess?
No, Amy.
Huh?
Amy.
Oh, Amy. Well, Amy Davy. All right. And what's your name?
Peter.
Peter. Okay, Amy and Peter. Now, everyone here, Amy and Peter are newlyweds, right? Relatively. Or, okay, Amy and Peter are newlyweds. And newlyweds need everybody else to wish them bliss. All right? And especially everyone else has to create a mandala around them. And we're going to do that more this afternoon. And be in the mandala and congratulate. But what does congratulate mean? Gratulate. It means to share the grace with someone. Okay? So the Sanskrit word is anumodana. And anumodana is the opposite of jealousy or envy. And envy is the enemy of it's another klesha. It twists us. It's addictive though. And we automatically begrudge others' happiness. You know, we automatically have a kind of thought, what about me? I didn't get married. Where's my girlfriend? Where's my wife? I've been married so long, it's boring. We're like, right? So, they are blissful. Well, yes, but what about us? Why aren't I being celebrated? There's a little reaction like that. Everybody has if you're attentive to your mind. And congratulating, it means the opposite of that. You say, may your bliss be my bliss. And it's really great. And actually, you don't want to congratulate a bank robber for robbing a bank or something. So sometimes we do it. We have movies about robberies and things, and the hero is a robber. And that's a bad karma. Then you get karma. You get the karma of the robbery if you congratulate in your mind, you know. You anumodana, somebody who does something bad. But some people who do something good love each other. You want to congratulate. So Amy and Peter. Just keep thinking about Amy and Peter. That's going to be the next practice we're going to do. We're all going to think of them in the center of a mandala, like one of those tantric Buddhas and Buddhesses, male and female Buddhas. And the bliss between them is going to ripple out, and it's going to heal all divorces, and it's going to heal all ex-enmities, and it's going to heal all ongoing marriages. And they're all going to feel renewed all over the planet. And maybe we don't need a lot of breeding, but we want a lot of bliss, okay? So it's riding now, okay, Peter and Amy? So it's just you have to be proud of that. Don't be shy and embarrassed, okay? You're the icons of mutually self and other equal love, okay? Except never quite equal because the male has to listen to the female if you want to have a happy marriage, okay? So, okay, I'm sorry, that was a digression. But I promised them I was going to do something with it. Just as in connection with this form, my body, devoid of any absolute self, my sense of I arose through strong habituation. Why should not the thought of I, through habit, not relate to another? All right? In other words, the human greatness of the human is that we can identify with another being. Like husband identifies with the wife identifies with the husband. Then, when they really identify, the doors of mutual identification become wide open, and often somebody else arrives who identifies with them. It can happen. And then that person is a stranger. But then all three of them are identifying with each other. And then that goes on longer than the honeymoon. There's such a thing as mother's gold. And thus, when I work for others' sake, there'll be no sense of boasting self-congratulation. It is just as when I feed myself, I don't expect to be rewarded. So I don't praise myself for feeding myself, unless I cooked it at the same time and it was really delicious. Then I do congratulate myself for making it really great. Therefore, just as I defend myself from even slight disparagement, likewise for other beings I shall now grow used to have a mind protective and compassionate. And I won't like people gossiping and saying bad things about other people, just like I don't like it when they say bad things about me, right? This is why the Lord Avalokita and Avalokiteshvara, that's the Buddhist Jesus, okay, the Buddhist Messiah, the Buddhist Krishna is Avalokiteshvara. And Ishvara means God, as you know, and because Maheshvara it can be a name of any god, but especially Shiva. And Avalokita, though, is a special word because it means who looks down, but it has a special kind of looking down. Who looks down worrying, caringly. So it's a definition of a loving God, of a God that looks down at the beings caringly. Of course, he didn't create them in that case because it's not a monotheistic, omnipotent idea, but it's the idea of a completely celestial being who totally loves other beings. And that's Avalokiteshvara, who the Buddhists believe reincarnates in infinite forms, as many as there are suffering beings. So Avalokiteshvara is a concept but without omnipotence, but it's a concept of emanation, what they call nirmana, of infinite emanation, of the omnipotence of love, you could really say, rather than controlling omnipotence. But let's say the omnipotence of love, which doesn't belong to anybody. Love is where people don't even belong to themselves anymore, and they all want to belong to the beloved. And then at that vast level, when the beloveds are so many, then they belong to everybody. Because of our attachment, so he says, out of great compassion, blessed his name, that those caught in the midst of multitudes might be released and freed from every fear. So Avalokita Ishvara, the name of that means the caringly worrying, looking after you God, Ishvara. It's a kind of resonance of the concept of Maha Ishvara, the great God, who's so much greater than you. Rather, it's the one who's worrying about you. So it's the essence of like the loving Krishna, the loving Shiva, or the loving Uma, the loving Shakti, like that. That those caught in the midst of multitudes. Oh no! Oh, it's after 12. Damn. So, it says, all the joy, I wanted to skip to the main thing. All the joy the world contains has come through wishing happiness for others. All the misery the world contains has come through wanting pleasure for oneself. Is there need for lengthy explanation? Childish beings look out only for themselves. Buddhas labor for the good of others. See the difference that divides them. If I do not interchange my happiness for others' pain, enlightenment will never be attained, and even in samsara, joy will fly from me. Leaving future lives outside the reckoning, never mind about future lives, even this life's needs are not fulfilled. The servants do not do their work, and masters do not pay the wages earned. Casting far away abundant joys that may be gained in this or future lives, because of bringing harm to other beings, I ignorantly bring myself intolerable pain. All the harm with which this world is rife, all fear and suffering that there is, clinging to the I, the ego, has caused it. What am I to do with this great demon? If this ego is not relinquished wholly, sorrow likewise cannot be avoided. If they do not keep away from fire, people can't escape from being burned. To free myself from harm, therefore, and others from their suffering, let me give myself to others, loving them as I now love myself. So, and then the actual practice as well is this. Take others higher, lower, higher, and equal as yourself. Identify yourself as other. Then, without another thought, immerse yourself in envy, pride, and rivalry, competitiveness. That's they never explain that one, the lamas, when they teach this. But that is the practice. In other words, when people meet each other, they're not as blunt about it like dogs are, sniffing, But they kind of measure each other. We do. And they immediately categorize the other person. Oh, are they in any way lesser than me? Are they in any way better off than me in any way? Are they sort of neck and neck with me? We kind of measure like that. It's not necessarily accurate, but people will have that kind of a reaction. And so the practice of this equalizing self and other and exchanging being preoccupied with them than yourself and cultivating empathy is that you become mindful about where your own mind is working. So you meet someone and you immediately, honestly, share with yourself, and I don't mention to people, share with yourself how you feel about them. Are they above me in any way, below me in any way, or just neck and neck? And then, whatever it is, if you think someone's lesser than you in any way, then you realize they have a gut reaction to you of envy. In one way they look up to you, but another they have an envious feeling because they're having the opposite of whatever you have. And then if you feel they're better than you in some way, like super something, then acknowledge a little envy you have, a little grudgingness about their sense of superiority. You realize they're being condescending about you. And if they're sort of equal to you, you realize that you have a natural rivalry. There's a little competitiveness there. So this is just human honesty to self-honesty, integrity. And then you imagine looking at yourself through their eyes. And then if in some way you think they're less in any way, then see how you look to someone who's envious of you. If you're competitive, see how you look to someone who's your rival. And if they're somehow you're envious of them, see how they look at you condescendingly and how you look. And at first, this will paralyze your interactions with people, of course. And so you do it meditatively, people you know. And then being honest, like, well, I do feel superior to my doorman, whatever it may be, Or like, you can start with remote acquaintances, And then you might get into it with siblings and all kinds of things. And then you get used to right away walking into a bigger picture in a room of like how it's different people looking at you. It's no longer paralyzing after a while. It becomes like a reflex where you sort of equalize the perspectives in a room. Like you try to take all the perspectives in as much as possible. It's not possible, of course, right? But then this is the practice. And by doing that, you automatically, and men in particular, I think it's harder for them, and I think women more naturally do this. And so, for example, if men practice this practice, I think they'll begin to see how things look to their female friends, who immediately do take others' perspectives almost in a situation in a room, and they're much more thoughtful. And other cultures help men do that. I'll never forget, I went out to dinner once after giving a lecture in Tokyo, invited by a very famous Japanese Buddhological scholar, and Hajime Nakamura. And he took us out for dinner, me and my interpreter, and about 5 other people, so maybe 4 other people and himself, so that's 8 people. And it was pretty crowded, very good Japanese restaurant, wonderful meal. But we approached the table that was reserved for us, and people were filtering through, coming between different tables. There wasn't that, Japanese, everything's a little tight. But when he got first to the table, himself, to the side of the table, and then he kind of made a delicate gesture like this, but everybody else stopped in their tracks, just because they were observing him, Because, of course, people are wondering where they're going to sit, right? And I felt I was close to him because I was the main guest, so he was sort of ushering me, but I was a little bit behind. But I could feel him go into a 3-dimensional holographic vision. Like the way they make those beautiful gardens in Japan. They have some bush at this height and a tree bending over at that height and a flower. They're really good at that. It goes into a complete 3-dimensional thing like this. And then And then he specifically and carefully sat everybody in what he felt was the best place for them to be, given their perspective on whatever the evening was, and because he knew everyone, I didn't know. I knew my interpreter and him, but I didn't know the other people. And it was amazing. It took a little time, maybe 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. I don't know. It was like it was timeless though, because it was such a lesson. Instead of like, oh yeah, okay, everybody sit down. You know how we might do. Oh yeah, grab a seat. It's like, no way. It's like, and then we all were like hovering over that table, and then okay, and then I felt wonderful where they sat me, and very interesting people with me. They seemed to all be happy. And he was a little bit removed. He wasn't all the opposite, but he was like there. I mean, it was really a lesson in refinement of culture, and etiquette and this kind of awareness of others is actually part of culture, right? And it's really, and it's born of meditation, and born of that kind of refinement comes like that, right? And then this also makes life enjoyable, doesn't it? Right away. Much less, you'll eventually be Buddha, and then you'll create seats for billion beings on different planets simultaneously, sitting in lotuses, feeling great. Okay. Although then those who are expecting to stay in heaven forever will be ejected to go find beings who are suffering, rather than the gods, who don't. Oh, I didn't finish about the gods. Well, I'll come back to that maybe another time. So, from your perspective and from the cook's perspective, it's lunchtime. Okay, thank you so much. We dedicate the merit. May everybody become Manjushri, gentle glory of full wisdom and fully devoted. All right.
This episode of the Bob Thurman podcast was brought to you in part from Tibet House US Menla Online. And to enjoy the full recording and video retreat of this podcast, please visit menla.org and their online section, or bobthurman.com. The online retreat is now available to enjoy from anywhere, anytime, via Teachable.com. Thanks for tuning in, and Tashi Delek.